Oh, hi! Welcome back to hell. In these lines that I'm about to read to you today, from 432 to 506, function as the middle movement of the demonic Catalogue, characterized by a transition from the brutal violence of the Canaanite gods to the insidious, gender-fluid, and culturally sophisticated nature of the idols that would later lead the Israelites astray. Milton continues to lean into his encyclopedic style, deploying similes and historical references that link the fallen angels to specific geographical locations, from the asphaltic pool to the green banks of the Kedron. The similes here act as a moral mapping, showing how the infernal influence spreads like a contagion across the promised land of the Levant. The passage moves into more elusive and seductive territory with Thammuz, whose annual wound in Lebanon turns the river red, and Astarte, the queen of heaven. Milton characterizes these figures through the lens of pagan ritualism and emotional manipulation. Unlike the crude violence of Moloch, these demons seduce through amorous ditties and soft lamentations, illustrating how the infernal army uses beauty and sorrow as weapons of corruption. All right, enough of that. Let's get back into it together. Milton the narrator continues the catalogue of demons, saying, "For those the race of Israel oft forsook their living strength, and unfrequented left his righteous altar, bowing lowly down to bestial gods, for which their heads as low bowed down in battle, sunk before the spear of despicable foes. With these in troop came Astoreth, whom the Phoenicians called Astarte, queen of heaven, with crescent horns, to whose bright image nightly by the moon Sidonian virgins paid their vows and songs, in Sion also not unsung, where stood her temple on the offensive mountain built by that uxorious king, whose heart, though large, beguiled by fair idolatresses, fell to idols foul. Thammuz came next behind, whose annual wound in Lebanon allured the Syrian damsels to lament his fate in amorous ditties all a summer's day, while smooth Adonis from his native rock ran purple to the sea, supposed with blood of Thammuz yearly wounded. The love tale infected Sion's daughters with like heat, whose wanton passions in the sacred porch Ezekiel saw, when by the vision led his eye surveyed the dark idolatries of alienated Judah. Next came one who mourned in earnest when the captive ark maimed his brute image, head and hands lopped off in his own temple, on the Grunzel edge, where he fell flat and shamed his worshippers. Dagon his name, sea monster, upward man and downward fish, yet had his temple high reared in Azotus, dreaded through the coast of Palestine, in Gath and Ascalon and Acheron and Gaza's frontier bounds. Him followed Rimmon, whose delightful seat was fair Damascus, on the fertile banks of Abana and Pharphar, lucid streams. He also against the house of God was bold. A leper once he lost and gained a king, Ahaz his sottish conqueror, whom he drew God's altar to disparage and displace for one of Syrian mode, whereon to burn his odious offerings and adore the gods whom he had vanquished. After these appeared a crew who under names of old renown, Osiris, Isis, Horus, and their train with monstrous shapes and sorceries abused fanatic Egypt and her priests to seek their wandering gods disguised in brutish forms rather than human. Nor did Israel scape the infection when their borrowed gold composed the calf in Oreb, and the rebel king doubled that sin in Bethel and in Dan, likening his maker to the grazed ox, Jehovah, who in one night when he passed from Egypt marching, equaled with one stroke both her firstborn and all her bleating gods. Belial came last, than whom a spirit more lewd fell not from heaven, or more gross to love vice for itself. To him no temple stood or altar smoked, yet who more oft than he in temples and at altars, when the priest turns atheist, as did Eli's son, who filled with lust and violence the house of God. In courts and palaces he also reigns, and in luxurious cities, where the noise of riot ascends above their loftiest towers, and injury and outrage. And when night darkens the streets, then wander forth the sons of Belial, flown with insolence and wine. Witness the streets of Sodom, and that night in Gibeah, when the hospitable door exposed a matron to avoid worse rape. These were the prime in order and in might. Whoa. That's it for today. Until next time, ciao.